500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die."
The Phantom,
the ghost who walks,
the Phantom,
enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom, he finds you.
G'day everybody, and for those who have come in late, you're listening to Expand the Phantom podcast. This is episode 139, 2009 in review. Tonight you're joined by me, Jermayn, and Dan. How are you, buddy?
Good, Jermayn. Good. I'm pleased that we're recording in time to get our best of 2019 out before the end of 2019. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to a bit of reflective time on the beach when this comes out, and hopefully enjoying looking back on the year that was as we see it out and welcome the new year.
Yeah, we're a little bit more organised this year. We've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years, so we're slowly getting there.
Get it right eventually.
Yeah. So basically, the last issue of 2019 has come out, and we've already got the FREW survey out as well, which we've got over 100 votes on that so far. We'll go through some of those in a second. And so we're just going to go over the best of 2019. Now, this is just our opinion, and then we're also going to talk about what the fans have voted as well. So if you disagree with us, or you think we've missed out something or something like that, please put it in the comments, or send us an email at ChronicleChamber@gmail.com, and we can have some fun, because this is just our opinion. And as you'll probably see, that there'll be some that me and Dan will agree on, and there'll probably be a lot that we disagree on. So let's have some fun, eh, buddy?
That is the way of things.
Yes.
And we should say, obviously we are absent Steve tonight, and that's unusual. This will be the first best of that I've done where it's just the two of us. Was it just you and Joe doing the best of back in 15, 16, whenever it was?
I can't remember. But yeah, Stephen can't join us tonight. He's got some stuff has come up, and so this is a hobby. This is a hobby that we do. So he's just had to take a step away for tonight just to be able to focus on some other things. So a shout out to Stephen. You will be remembered, maybe. Yeah, no, you'll be remembered. But no,
it should be a quicker podcast though. So without the third wheel dragging us down, no, without the voice of reason settling our arguments. More to the point.
Yeah, but no, a huge shout out to Stephen for another year helping us out and stuff like that, and joining us when he can. But let's get on board, because I'm sure even Stephen wouldn't want us to talk about him for 2 hours. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to just go through a run of the tape. So we're going to go over every publisher that has published stories or comics. So we'll do this real quick, and we're going to take in turns so you're not listening to the same voice. And then after each section, so first of all, we're going to go through the newspaper stories, and then we're going to go through then Hermes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to have a quick word for a minute or so, and we'll just go from there. And then we're going to go into further detail when it comes to stories and stuff. So Dan, do you want to start us off with the tale of the tape from a KFS newspaper?
Sure.
Stories point of
Well,
view?
in my humble opinion, when you talk about a year of the fandom, you've got to start with King Features, and that's why I've edited and gutted them and pasted them at the top of the list here, because King Features at the end of the day does own the character, they drive the character, and it's what they put out that so many fandom fans consider law and go from there. So in terms of the stories that they've put out this year, we've had 2 daily stories. Heloise Comes Home, finished in 2019. It did start late last year. And the Rhodian column, which has just started in the last couple of months. And I'm enjoying that story. So those are the 2 dailies. And 3 Sunday stories so far. The Little Detective Who Disappeared, finished off by Jeff. So I should have said the dailies are, of course, all by Mike Manley. The Sunday stories are all by Jeff Weigel. Little Detective Who Disappeared, finished this year. The Free Ava Front was a fully contained within 2019 story. And The Spy Ship has just started again in the last month or so. And all of those stories, of course, written by Tony DePaul.
Yeah.
So
Now,
your thoughts on the 5 stories that we've seen in 2019 from King Features, Jim?
we've talked about this before. The daily stories tend to be more the epic style of stories, the longer, of course there's one or two that will break that mold, but the dailies seem to be, in my opinion, the epic drama. If it was a movie, it will be a 2.5 hour type of movie, like Avengers type of style. And they're good. I will admit I sometimes do struggle reading them day to day, and I kind of like reading them in a pile, like, a batch, like a month or two at a time. And then the Sunday stories tend to be a little bit more fun, if that's kind of one way to put it. But yeah, no, I've been enjoying them. We've been enjoying the art. Mike and Jeff have been going from strength to strength in their art. Probably, it's top quality art. The storytelling, is still of top quality. So no, I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to add to that. So we'll just move on. But I agree with what you've said.
Oh, there's a first. All right, so let's go to the tail of the tape. We're going to go with FREW, which is an Australian publication. So the regular issues, there have been issues, which is from 1,089 to 1,856.
Jim, can I interrupt?
Now,
Sorry, can you Jim, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can you just start FREW again, because the internet dropped out just as you started. So if you start with in Australia, there's FREW. If you can start from there again.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so moving on. So let's go on to FREW. So FREW is an Australian publication. I'm sure everyone knows that, but just in case you don't. Now, FREW have been changing things up a little bit. So normally there's just been the regular issues, but the last couple of years there's been a few others. So let's go through them. So from a regular issue point of view, there's been 28 that have been published in 2019. So that started off at 1,829 and went to 1,856. Now, the first time published stories by FREW, so this is stories that have been the first time published by FREW. They could be in newspapers or in Team Fantomen or whatever, is 27 stories. Now, for Gaslight, Heart of Darkness, etc., that's only one story each. There's been another 20 stories that have been previously published by FREW. So this could be old newspaper stories. It could be stories like The Black Glove, which was an old Team Fantomen comic story that's been published as well. From the Kid Phantom point of view, there's only been 2 issues. That is down from about 4 from the last couple of years. Phantom's World, there's been 3 issues, which again is down from 4 from last year. The Giant Size Phantom, which in a sense has probably been going from strength to strength. There's been 4 issues of that. Now, there's been 0 trade paperbacks. Last year we had 2. And,
no, I was not. I think it was 1 each the last 2 years.
No, I
reckon for those who came in late, I think for those who came in late was 2017.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me finish going off there. You check on you check on Phantom Wiki while I continue on with the run of the tape. Right. From a graphic novel point of view, we've had 1, which has been the first time that FREW has been done 1. Now, for those who are good, remember 2018. This is what we've got this year is 38 comics from FREW, which is actually down from 2018, which is 42. However, it is actually more than 2017, which was 36. So while we've gotten less comics than, say, 2018, we've actually gotten more than 2017. So, there's just a quick synopsis. And then on top of that, on top of the 27 stories that are first time published by FREW, there's actually also been 13 new stories that have actually been commissioned by FREW for FREW. For instance, this is including Scorpius, which was a giant size issue, Kid Phantom, the graphic novel, and then also there's been a couple of other stories like Requiem, It Tolls for Thee, and
Hero Complex, Day at the Races,
etc., etc., etc. So there's been, so when you think of 13 compared to 27 new stories, that's almost half are actually from FREW, which is a fairly giant slab of, a piece of the cake. That half of them are from FREW and the other half are from Team Fantomen. So, Dan, did you find out if that trade paperback was?
Yeah, I got Phantom Wiki was too hard. I just went to the bookshelf and grabbed it. It's copyright 2017, so they're down 1, not 2 from last year.
Okay, all right, sweet. Have anything you want to quickly raise about FREW?
I think you mentioned the important bits, and that is that half the new stories were commissioned by FREW, and they're FREW-owned stories, because I think that's a really important point to make. And we're starting to see some of those stories appear in Team Fantomen now, and or in Team Fantomen stories or Egmont comic books, which I think is fantastic. It's got to be an extra revenue stream for FREW as well. So I just think that's fantastic that's where they've gone. On the other hand, I am still disappointed at the change in approach for Kid Fandom. I'm disappointed in the way that, I'm going to be honest, I was disappointed as a consumer in the way that was handled and how it just disappeared. And, we found out when it wasn't on our options for the resubscription. So that was a disappointing way to find out. And despite all of the assurances that, there are other iterations of Kid Fandom coming, and I know you've seen artwork for it, and we know that Kid Fandom is going to be in the board game, but there hasn't been, more public movement on what's happening with that. Where is it? Where is even issues 9 and 10, which was certainly suggested. So disappointment there, but overall excited at the number of new stories that FREW produced for themselves as much as anything.
Yeah, that point was actually in one of my points further down, so I won't. So I think it was in yours as well. So we won't go too much further, and we'll leave that for another bit.
Okay.
Dan, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown on Hermes for 2019?
Okay, so I'm going to start by reassuring you again. It's pronounced Hermes. So Hermes Press Publications. Now, I don't actually have any of these. I don't own any of these, so I can't hold one up and show people or anything like that. I have a feeling I'm getting one in the mail very soon, thanks to a faffle on Facebook, which is very exciting. So looking forward to that arriving. But in terms of what Hermes have produced this year, 1 collection of Sundays, 3 collections of daily stories. Now, I was going to ask you, you put this list together, Jermaine, does that, those 3 dailies, have you got the Cy Barry
as one?
Issue 17 as one. Okay, so there's 2 versions of that daily issue then, the special Cy Barry cover as well. 3 Avon novels, and no, unfortunately, regular comic issues, if you like. And I guess we're talking there about the continuation of President Kennedy's mission. But we think that that'll appear as a trade paperback in this list this time next year, because it's being advertised widely at the moment. So 3 extra releases than 2018. So they've been a bit more productive in the Phantom world this year, Jermaine.
Yeah, I think from memory last year they only released the 1 daily. So that kind of helps in the sense that I think originally the Sundays were supposed to be 2 or 3 a year, and the dailies were supposed to be 4 or 5 or 6 a year or something like that, like once every quarter or something like that. So it's good to see a few more come out. They're brilliant books. You can't, you can't fault them for the quality of the book. It's just, I guess, the timing of them and them actually being released tends to be
the value of them. Issue. I don't know that many fans would want them to be coming out much quicker. I wouldn't be able to afford one of those every quarter. I don't get them as they are.
Yeah, so you haven't bought them anyway. So, but yeah, they are worth it. So with this one that you've won in the Faffle, which was a competition on a Facebook page, is that the first one that you've got?
Yes, it will be.
Is that the first one you'll have? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Now, when you gave Sean the address, you didn't give him my address by accident, did you?
No, that's happened too many times. I'm being very careful with that now.
All right, sweet. Okay, so So moving on, another one which some fans may not know about, but it is a series that's been being published since the 90s. So it's quite a long-standing series, is the Comics Revue, which is a USA publication. Now, Comics Revue, basically they put together newspaper stories or from different characters. So there's the Phantom, there's Modesty Blaze, there's Flash, Mandrake, a whole heap of different characters like that. And then they put it into a thick book of about, I think it's about 100 pages, nice colour cover and stuff like that. So they release those every second year. I should have been a little bit more organised because I actually do have some of them this year, but they're somewhere, I don't know where they are. Where would they be, actually? I'll see if I got them. I might just give me here's one. Okay, there's one. So for those who are watching on the YouTube, at least you can kind of see something rather than just my face while I'm talking. So Comics Revue, so you've got it here. This one is actually a cover by Jeremy McPherson. There's been 6 issues this year, and 3 of them have actually featured the Phantom on the front cover. Now, last year there was also 6, but none of them actually featured the Phantom on the cover. So if you're the type of person who just wants to buy stuff because the Phantom's on the cover, you may want to check these out because these are actually good quality things. And then if you're not just a Phantom collector, and if you like reading other characters and other newspaper strips and stuff like that, this is definitely worth getting. Have you ever brought one of those?
No, I don't think I've ever laid my hands on one, to be honest.
Yeah. Have you seen some of the covers?
Yeah, of course.
They're quite nice.
Yeah.
I will tease by that. One of those covers has actually made it in my top for the year, which we'll talk about later.
There
So
you go.
moving on, let's go on
sizzle.
to the Fantomen series, which is the Swedish series. Do you want to give us the run of the tape?
Yep. So rundown of Fantomen this year is that there's been 19 regular issues. So that makes them the second most prolific Phantom story producer in the world, behind FREW, obviously, whose extensive list we heard from earlier. 3 trade paperbacks as well, and one of those is the new, innovation, Fantomen Kids. Here it is, Fantomen Kids, for you to see that that was there. That's the first and only Fantomen book that I own, actually. So there you go. I haven't really, I've flicked through it. I haven't even bothered to try to read it with your app trick, but anyway. Of the 19 regular issues, there were 15 new stories for Team Fantomen, so more prolific in that sense in creating their own stories than FREW have been. 11 newspaper stories were published for the first time ever in Sweden, which amazes me that they could be have so many in back catalogue, I guess, having not been used before. But I guess this is the key to it. The last point there is that there's been no stories repeated. So you say, I guess that means that every time you picked up a Fantomen story in Sweden this year, you were seeing a story, no matter how old, for the very first time.
Yes, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's debate. We've heard some of Mikkel's reviews of some of those stories, some that he's enjoyed, some that he hasn't. Huge shout out to Mikkel and thanks for his reviews this year. They've been enlightening for myself, and I'm sure they've been enlightening for a lot of others. But the 3 trade paperbacks are good quality ones. I've got, just for those on the video, I've actually haven't catalogued them yet. So there's one of them there, which is the normal one, which is brilliant. And then there's the Fantomet Kids one as well. So they are very nice comics. Again, you know, you got to either buy something that's not in English or for whatever reason. But yeah, no. 15 new Team Phantom stories is pretty big as well, because that's still larger than FREW. So at this stage, they're still the leading new Phantom story creator in the world, but not by far, which is...
Not by much this year. FREW's, they've been the only one really for a long time, other than King Features. So for FREW to suddenly be knocking on the door 13 as opposed to 15, that's it speaks volumes as to what FREW's doing. Certainly, it's no criticism of Fantomen at all.
No.
It just speaks to more what FREW's doing.
And to be honest, from a consumer point of view, which we're fans first, more new created stories is only a good thing.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't like all of the stories, having more created stories is a better thing. Like, I also read Asterix and Tintin. At the moment, I think we're getting one new Asterix story every 2 years. Tintin, we haven't had a new story since the creator died. I also read Bit of Modesty Blaze as well. Haven't had a new story of those for ages and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of characters out there that don't get new stories. So, having 30 stories, give or take, a year, new stories, that's a big deal.
Yes, it is.
All right. So moving on to Fantomet, which is the Norway version of the Egmont magazine. So now, those who may not remember, 2018 saw the end of the regular magazines and the start of the softcover books or the trade paperbacks. Now, of those, there has been 2. They have featured some stories that haven't been published before, like there was The Rat Must Die in issue 2, and I believe there was also, which one was Duncan's and Jeff Weigel's story? Was that in issue 1 or 2? I think that was issue 2. And there's been some other stuff in it as well.
Well, I thought it was 1.
Yeah, no, it was number 2. I'm pretty sure. So, only 2 issues for Fantomet this year. I guess the good thing about them is that they can, majority of them do get the Fantomen or the Swedish magazine, but hopefully next year we will get a few more than just 2 trade paperbacks for Norway. Yep. All right. Want to move on to the next one, buddy?
Yep, no worries. So India is another producer of Phantom comics this year, and one we haven't talked about in previous years. Regal has recommenced, or have commenced for the first time. Published. Regal Publishers have produced 5 Phantom comic books. Just sort of flicking through the Phantom wiki covers of them now, it's interesting that there's a bit of a trend to the stories. The 5 books all sort of seem to collect, for the most part, newspaper stories, but there is the odd Team Fantomen story in there as well, which is interesting. And the covers, though, are all sort of a mishmash of famous scenes or artwork we've seen on other cover art and that sort of stuff. So whoever plays with Photoshop over at Regal Publishers has a fun job putting the covers together, I think. So so those are the 5 issues we've seen there. And I think that the big news there, obviously, is that they've started and that there's a publisher bringing Phantom stories to the public in India, which is fantastic.
Yep, and they're in colour as well, as you can see if you're watching on YouTube as well. I've just managed to dig one out here, and they're not that expensive to get a hold of either. I think I have a Phantom buddy who picks a couple up for me, and I think they work out to be about $5 each or something like that. But it's good to see an Indian publisher. Now, this is in a language called Malayalam, so it's not a major language from memory either, which is rather interesting. Cool bananas. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go the hungry ones. Just now, there's still a little bit of mystery about this, in the sense that we don't have a physical copy yet, so far what we're aware of, there's been 1 issue that's featured the Phantom, and from what we understand, I think it's every 2nd issue will feature the Phantom, and then they're bi-monthly. So Probably 2020 we will have a couple more issues, and then there will be a couple with the Phantom on the cover as well. So that will be nice to see. And again, just like what we discussed with Regal and Brazil, which will be coming up next by Dan, it's good to see these countries republishing a Phantom.
Yeah, what's the name of the publishing company over there in Hungary, Jim?
Did you just ask that to try and
Absolutely. I'm entertained to hear how you're going to pronounce this.
I don't know. It's almost like a Kockás. I think it's supposed to be like comics or something like that. So I'll go Kockás.
Okay, that's not bad. I was probably going to go with Kockás or something, but it's an unfortunate combination of letters for an Australian trying to decipher.
Yes, it is.
All right. So Brazil, you mentioned Brazil. Let's move on to them. The Brazilian Mythos is what we've been seeing comics produced from over there. And again, it's just great to see a company up and running and presenting Brazilians with the Phantom stories. There's been 6 regular issues, which is a great way to get up and going. And the trade paperback as well, which we featured on the last Comics and News, All Phantasma, which is the reproduction of the Danger in the Forbidden City story. So again, they've got unique covers, which is fantastic. They are largely again reprinting Lee Falk stories from newspaper strips. So again, the big news there is that they're happening.
Exactly. There's actually been I like their mix of what they're doing. Like they've got the 2 different versions. They've got the reprint stories as one different series, and then they've got the newer Team Fantomen stories as part of the second series.
Oh, okay. So that's the differentiation. Yeah, okay.
I think they call it like a chronicle version, which is the reprints, and then they've got the new version. And I like it. I think the new versions are every month, or maybe every bi-monthly, and then the chronicle issues is a little bit less. So it might be like, it might be every 3 months or something like that, because I think there's more other issues coming up. So, but no, it's great to see Brazil doing it and publishing the stories. And I can't wait to see them. I like the covers. One thing I would like to see them is actually do more of their own covers rather than just pinching some of the. The
Chronicle story seems to be the ones where they're not as original.
Yeah, and a couple of the what do you call it, of the Team Fantomen ones are actually Team Fantomen covers as well. So say for instance, like issue 1 is a Brazilian created one that's actually by a Brazilian artist. Issue 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I think 5 comes out in 2020, are actually all Team Fantomen.
Okay.
So you've got Henry. I can't remember who drew that one. Issue 2 was done by Henrik Johnson. Then you've got Henrik Solstrom, with issue 3. Issue 4 is Henrik Solstrom, which features a story by Alex Subiak. And then issue 5 is a cover by Sal Valido as well.
Right, there you go. All right, so that's Brazil.
No worries. So moving on, flipping through through the northern states, or through the northern countries, we are going to lightning strikes. It has been a bit of a whirlwind around the world, and last but not least, the Irish publisher. Now, there's been 2 issues that have been released in 2019. However, most of us know that they're not quite available. Well, they're not readily available is probably the best word. They are available. I've got a couple here, and there's been some other Australians that do have their copies as well. But a lot of Australians and a lot of other people don't have theirs yet. So we all know the issues that's been. So I don't think we need to dwell on that. I'm looking forward to doing a proper review in 2020 on the stories.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So that's a fair bit there, Dan.
It really is. Do you want me to go through a bit of a summary of everything?
Yeah. Let's
Totals?
go through a bit of a summary, and while you have a talk, I'm going to have a drink.
Righto. The biggest number, I think, out of this, there's going to be some bigger numbers, but the biggest, most important number is probably that there's 8 different countries producing Phantom stories in 2019, or producing Phantom comic books. And it would be a while since we've seen 8 different countries producing it. So have to go back and talk to, people like Chris Hill or Jermayn himself about when was the last time we would have seen that many different countries all producing at least one Phantom issue in a year.
I reckon the early 90s you would have, because there would have been all of the ex-Russian countries as well as, I think, and France and Italy. So early 90s there definitely would have been more than 8. But I think since then, I doubt there would have been 8 countries.
Righto. So there you go. A huge year in 2019 in that regard. What they've done, those 8 countries, is they've produced 76 different comics. And those are just the regular issues, I guess, or the, up to the 100-page issues, but just your standard 1, 2, 3 numbering issues. So 76 of those books, 6 trade paperbacks, 4 hardcover collections of dailies and Sundays. Obviously, that's Hermes Press, who are also responsible for the 3 prose novels that have come out, and 1 graphic novel, which has come from FREW. So 6 trade paperbacks, 4 hardcover collections, 3 prose novels, 1 graphic novel, and a partridge in a pear tree, just about.
I was going to say the same thing.
And we've said here 23 brand new stories, but it must be 28. We must have. So with the maths we were doing there before was something in excess of 25 to 30 brand new stories that have been published for the first time ever in this year, and I think that's a massive effort from Phantom publishers across the world.
So there's been a Phantom comic published in every continent bar Antarctica in 2019.
Antarctica. Africa didn't produce much.
Yeah, and Africa.
But yes, otherwise, yeah. So that's pretty amazing. And 76 comics, that's more than one a week. Basically, a brand new story being produced somewhere in the world once a fortnight. It's pretty impressive.
It is. And I guess the advantage of something like that is that we're seeing a lot of new talent as well, like a lot of new writers, a lot of new artists. We've seen, just at the top of my head, we've seen Anthony Spade, we've seen Jeff Weigel do comic books, we've seen Duncan, Matt Kine, Peter Anderson, there's that Carlos Pedrazio, Janice Orton. So there's a lot more new stories being created. Wendell Cavalcanti from Brazil. We've had, both Team Fantomen and FREW have had to expand out of the normal pool and actually go, we need more artists, we need more creators, and search the world. So it's been, for people who like art and like seeing different art styles from around the world and all that, that's another exciting part of it, because it opens you wide. It opens your eyes to a lot more out there.
And I guess it's important to note too that when we're talking about these comics, these are all licensed. These are all paying money back to King Features for the ability to do this. It would be interesting, and I come from a place of complete ignorance when it comes to DC and Marvel and everybody else, but I wonder, would there be any other characters, honestly, would there be any other characters in the world that would have had 76 unique comic books about that character, 23 brand new stories about that character worldwide? Would that, Batman, would Superman, would they be in that realm?
They'll be fairly close, because I'd assume that most of them would have they don't have just the one arc. Like there's, but it's a question that I probably wouldn't be very informed to be able to make a decision on as well.
If any of the listeners, if you are more informed than us about those other comic book worlds that we don't pay any attention to. And you might know something about, how competitive are these numbers for the fandom in 2019? How competitive is that with other characters around the world?
Yeah, it's a good point. Anything else you can kind of think of that might want to have
I think a lot of the rest of what we want to talk about is going to be covered in the next bit, which is the bit that I've been looking forward to be honest. So let's roll on.
All right. Okay. So we'll move on to our next section again. And so basically what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about our favourites. Now, this is just the favourites for ourselves and Dan. We're just going to wax and go in turns and list 3 or 4 of each category and have a bit of a chat about that. Now, again, this is just our opinion. If you have a different opinion and you would like to let us know about it or debate us on that, you can do that via our social media where we put this up, or you can send us an email. So if you're going to be a little bit aggro, send us an email, because then it doesn't go on Facebook and stuff like that. But so, Dan, do you want to give us your best so this is not the FREW covers, this is the best non-FREW cover.
Yes, okay. So non-FREW covers I actually find to be a really hard category, because they're not books that you've actually held in your hand. For me as an Australian, I collect FREWs, and very rarely I collect the other stuff. But it makes sense as a category, because FREW sort of produces half of the comic books in the world the fandom books in the world, as we've discussed, and the rest of the world does the other half. When I went through and selected, I sort of went around the world, and my last place I came to was Sweden. That completely blew my numbers out, because then all of a sudden I'm looking at all of these Fantomen covers, so many of which are just fantastic. So I stuck with sort of one from different continents, maybe, if I look at it now. Maybe I have, actually. So the ones that I selected...
Minus Antarctica and Africa, of course.
Yeah, of course. So from South Africa, from South America, I've gone O Fantasma #1. I was really pleased to hear you say that was an original Brazilian artist when you mentioned it there before, because I'd already picked it as one of my best, my favourite non-FREW covers. It's got Phantom on a rearing hero there, which I really like. Lightning Strike, Phantom Strikes #3, which again I haven't actually got a copy of, but it's the Doug Klaber reinterpretation of a cover that he'd done earlier. It really strikes me. I love any of those images of the Oath and that sort of thing. Those are always really powerful images for mine. I love the Cy Barry special cover for Hermes Press #17, and you can see I have a copy of it on my wall, and I know you do as well, Jermaine. It's a fantastic picture, and one that I'm really happy to see that Cy is still out there producing new cover art. And then Fantomen #8 was the one I wound up with. When I looked at Fantomen, I thought that was my favourite for the year, and that was the one where he's falling out or diving out of the plane, more to the point. Which I found to be a really dynamic image. Henrik Sahlstrom, I believe, did that.
I think that one might be Ruiz. Yeah, Rafael Ruiz.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, Henrik. No, Rafael Ruiz this year for me then from Fantomen.
Yeah. So just a quick one. The Brazilian artist that you were talking about, he actually did the FREW folio. Remember the FREW folio of Phantom in the red costume?
The red one with the skull on his chest, I think.
Yeah, and he's standing on the rock. So he's actually the same artist who did that as well. So, and then just a quick shout out, Rafael Rue. We're actually doing an interview with him, which will be a written interview, which will be on the website in the new year as well. So that's a nice little name plug.
All right. So what about you? What were your best non-FREW covers?
Okay, best non-FREW covers will be Fantomen 21, which is the Phantom riding on Hero with Devil. It's interesting that we've both chosen covers with Hero and Devil, and then you've got a campfire, and the smoke and the haze produces a skull. It's just such a striking pose. It's got the skull, which is unique to it. The other one will be Fantomen 25-26, which is the Phantom holding a light, like a torch on a stick type of thing, with some skulls in the background as well. It's just, they're both very moody, and they just speak to me. And then the third one that I did like, which is going to be a little bit different, which is actually Comics Revue issue 393 and 394, which is actually a cover from, I can't remember his name. Give me a second and I'll find it.
In the thumbnail, it struck me as being very Defenders of the Earth-ish. It's a group of 4. Is Modesty Blaze, is it their traditional or their typical heroes, is it? Or group?
The typical heroes, so it's Enrique Romeo, who's a fairly famous European artist. He did Modesty Blaze, and then also, who's that other chick, Exa or something like that as well. So he's quite well known for his female characters, if you want to put it that way. But yeah, so it's quite a moody red-black background. If you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. It's got the Phantom Flash standing up, and then it's got a very sensual Modesty Blaze and Exa, who is all done by Enrique Romeo. I like the cover. It's just, it pops out. I was very happy to get that cover myself. So, that's one that I have included as my top 3.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, what about then? Let's move closer to home and look at FREWs then, and think about our best 3 covers, or our favourite 3 covers. Now, Steve, in any of these categories that are covered by the survey, so this is a good opportunity to plug the FREW and the ChronicleChamber survey for your favourites of 2019. As Joe mentioned off the top, we've got over 100 people who have already responded to the survey, and it doesn't close until the 12th of January, which is when the prizes are drawn. You can read all about that on the website. But Steve has entered his results in the survey, so we've been able to pull those out. So in terms of the best FREW covers, his favourite for this year was 1829, which is Glenn Lumsden, the Prince Rex special, which has gone on to have a poster made of it by FREW. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 1830, the very next issue, which was, of course, the Phantom Goes to War annual by Wendell Cavalcanti. That's Steve's second, and he's got the current Christmas issue, 1856, from Clayton Barton as his third. So he's gone at either end of 2019. The first 2 books and the very last one is what Steve's done. Now, myself, I've probably gone a little bit left field when I look at the way the survey results have fallen. But I like what I like, and I'm not going to, not going to shy away from that. So, in no particular order, again, if I was to say my absolute favourite Phantom cover from FREW this year, it would be the Phantom Adventures from Chris Weil. This is such a striking image. They made a door poster of it as well, a huge poster, and I love that. It's one of my favourite things that I picked up this year. The fletching on the cover as well, having that different effect, and the way that the title's been raised and all the rest of it as well. It's just a fantastic cover, and I absolutely love this one. Others to feature in my top 3, and again, we listed off all of the books that FREW have done. So Phantom Adventures first, I'd probably have issue 1834 by Grange Wallace. It's probably my second, and 1835 by Jeremy McPherson. And those are the 2 that are probably a little bit less represented in the survey, but I just really love those 2 covers. And I think in both of them, it's the use of light, the glowing effect of Grange Wallace's, and again, there's a poster been made of that. And Jeremy McPherson's, I think we might have said in one of the previous comics and news that I'm a sucker for a good mark, and he's got a flaming good mark on the cover of 1835. So I suspect that's why I've landed on that one.
No worries. I wonder whether Grange. Yeah, it'll just be interesting whether they would actually vote for those as their favourite covers or something as well. Okay, so I've gone the 2019 annual, The Phantom Goes to War. This is in no particular order. Just really liked it. It's a nice collage. It's got amazing colouring. So what's interesting about that cover is it was created by Wendell, who's a Brazilian, and then it was coloured by an Italian. So then it was published by an Australian company. So it's a nice way of looking at it. So
an international comic book.
Yeah, and another one would be the 1853, which is the Pit of Doom by Luca Alberta. When I saw it, and I did it in the comic review, this will be very hard to be. I said this will be a top 3 cover, and then my other one will be the Chris Whale one for all the reasons you covered as well. And I'm not surprised I will not be surprised if that ends up being a top 3 cover for the year as well.
Yeah. And look, the Luca Alberta Pit of Doom cover, I did really like that as well. And it's a unique styling, but and on maybe on a different day, it might have pipped into the top 3. But it is a point in time as much as anything in. Yeah,
it's really hard to choose because there's been, I don't know how to say this. I'm not sure if this is going to sound bad or not, but there's been, in some years, there's been some really, really good ones and then some ones that are not so good. This year, there's been a lot of good ones and a lot fewer poor covers, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
so it's a very even spread this year. And
the overall standard is higher. There's no doubt about that.
Oh yeah, and we've said that for the last 3 years that that generally what happens is between 9 choices of the 3 of us, we'll probably come up with 6 different covers, which just looking at it, I think that's actually what we've done. So I think the only ones we've doubled up on is the annual and then the Chris Whale. So it's not a surprise. So should we do the top 5 of the survey so far? Now, as you said, the survey ends on the 12th of January. This podcast will be coming out slightly before, just about a week.
Nearly
so.
2.
So you've got, I was giving yourself a day or 2.
It's going to come out before New Year's Day.
So there's still time to get your vote in, and there's prizes as well. So in first place, with 26% of the votes, is the issue 1850, which is done by Tessa. Now, you go second, and we'll kind of alternate it.
Oh, well, I was just going to explain the percentages at the moment. So when we say that Tessa for 1850 has got 26%, that means 26% of all people who have voted had this as one of their top 3. So that's how the leaderboard sort of works. So that's coming in first at the moment. Second is the Luca Alberta cover, the Pit of Doom, which we mentioned. And third is the Chris Whale Phantom Adventures, which I said was clearly first. So what do I know?
Which is at 18%.
Which is at 18%. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then the annual, which is the Wendell Cavallanti cover, is at 17.5%, which is still pretty close. And then we've got a tie for 5th spot. It looks like.
Yeah, and that's Grange Wallace for 1834 and Clayton Barton for 1856. At the moment, are tied in 5th spot on 16%. So, as we say, very preliminary. And I guess what it means is you can see, or you can hear what other people are thinking at this stage, and maybe if your favourite isn't there. So, for instance, I'm still, if I could vote again, I'd include Jeremy McPherson again to try and get him up into that top 5 or top 3. But anyway, if you're listening to this before the 12th of January, get onto the website, chroniclechamber.com, or actually you may even be able to remember bit.ly/FREW 2019 will take you straight to the survey as well.
Yeah, and something's interesting just looking at those survey results compared to our votes. All of the ones that we voted for, except one of yours, is in that top 5.
Yeah.
And then and the last.
But one that none of us voted for is currently in first place.
Yeah. So again, if you disagree with us, you know what to do. If you want to be vocal and mean, you can email us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com, or if you want a light-hearted bit of fun, which what social media should be, you can comment and reply to us and tell us that we don't know what we're talking about. And
best yet, put your money where your mouth is and get in and vote in the survey. Have your voice heard.
Yes, that's it. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is the best writer. Now we're going to do, well, Dan, you're doing a Stephen and keep fudging. I've got here 2 each, and you've got what, 5? You've
3.
got 3. So what we'll do is we'll do 2 or 3 of each, and then we'll kind of go from there. Now, my best 2 come from the same issue, which is the annual, and that is Peter Anderson, who did the Requiem story, and then the Paul Mason, which is the For Who the Bell Tolls story. I like wartime stories. I've read Commando comics for as long as I've read Phantom comics, so I enjoy that genre. I loved how the stories portrayed a realistic version of war. They didn't glorify it. They didn't make the Phantom into some Commando style comic, which sometimes, a lot of the times, there is. It showed humility. It showed what a horrific scene it was. So for me, that type of writing really spoke to me. Like I'm sure most people, we've got relatives who have served and stuff like that as well. So so for me, they were my best 2 writers, and I would, if I had to go a third, I don't know. For me, those 2 just are above the level. And there's people that I would have liked to include. Like, I enjoyed Duncan's story. I enjoyed what Matt Kime did. I enjoyed what Mikel Sol has done as well, like writing Luaga back as president. But for me, I had to stick to those 2. And that is the rule that we did too. So that's why I'm only choosing 2.
Well, I'm not sure where the rule came from, but anyway. Look, if we have to choose 2, I'll nominate my 2, but I'll give a shout-outs the same way you did. So, Peter Anderson would definitely get a shout-out for Requiem, because I really enjoyed the way he gave life back to the Vultures, which is a that haven't seen enough light, a group of bad guys that was just really good to see a dark story, but all the things you said there before. I'd also give a shout out then, if we're doing shout outs and we can have a top 2, I'd also give a shout out to Tony DePaul, because I think that the way that the game of Avar, that's not the game of Alvar is a different story, isn't it?
That's a fault story.
Yeah, that's right. Where was it? The Free Avar front. Sorry, the Free Avar front. I really enjoyed that as the Sunday story, and I really like the way the Rhodian column is coming back to the Python. And so Heloise, I think Tony DePaul is going really well in terms of writing a continuity at the moment, and he's got that so clear in his mind where the overall story arc is going. So I'm really enjoying that from him. But if I've got to go a top 2. You did mention him as a shout-out, but Matt Kime I would have as, I guess, in second place, if you like, for the best writer that I've seen this year. You mentioned Mikel Sol, who I guess I haven't read the story that you referred to there, so I'm just going from FREW stories and things I've read. But in that sense, Matt Kime, certainly the way that he was able to channel Lee Falk from the Raymore era, so not just writing a Lee Falk story, but actually going to a particular era. And as I said in the review at the time, I really, really enjoyed the story. It felt like a daily. It felt like one of those, rollicking adventures that you were talking about before that might go for a year in the newspapers, but something entertaining is happening every day. I loved the style in which he wrote it. And one thing I did forget to mention in the review we did, but I'm pleased to be able to have a second chance and mention it here. I actually really liked the way that in the story, the Phantom and the Diana were connected at all times, but never actually met. Not once in the whole story did they meet. And again, that's such a Lee Falkism from that era. So for being able to channel some of those original Falk vibes, Matt Kime for me. And top writer for 2019, I'm going to go for Paul Mason, particularly for Bell Tolls for Thee, for similar reasons, but in the sense that he has, similar but different. He's channeled what it means to be the Phantom in that story. He's channeled what it means to be the Phantom and put him in an environment that we've never seen before, and is one fraught with moral tightropes to walk. And he, in Tolls for Thee, Phantom does that really well. And I think it's a great starting point for what I hope is an ongoing series. I know the second in the series is in the can and coming at some point. But really looking forward to seeing that. So those are my favourite writers of this year.
Awesome. So what we'll do next is we'll talk about the best story artist. So again, 2 or 3. So these are stories from around the world, stories that we've read. As you would probably guess, most of us will probably lean a little bit more towards the FREW stories because that's just what we're more exposed to. But Dan, do you want to shoot us off with the best story artist for yourself?
Yeah, okay. So the art that I've seen the best, I guess, in stories I've read so far this year, I'm going to go with Jeff Weigel, both for his work in the Sundays and for the 2 books that he published in FREW as well. I really love Jeff Weigel's Phantom. I think I love the way that he draws the character. I love the way that he draws the supporting characters and the backgrounds. I really enjoy what he does. And the opportunity to see in 2 comic books, Hero Complex and Errand of Mercy, which he wrote himself as well. Just to see the variety that he can produce was, I really enjoyed that. So he'd probably be my number 1. And I really enjoyed when I was thinking who to vote for this. I thought, well, which story, when I think back on it, really stands out in my mind that I can visually see the images from that story. And it was from Evil Lurks in the Night from Shane Boyce, which probably surprised me. But I guess it's the combination of how dark the story was and then the artwork to match it. Some of the imagery from that book has just resonated with me. So, I'd have that. And I'm going to give a shout out, and he'll probably be embarrassed if he's not enough already, but Paul Mason, again, I think I mentioned variety when it came to Jeff Weigel, but Paul to have 2 different styles in a sense when he draws Kid Phantom, because I love the artwork in that. And then Bell Tolls for Thee is, you can tell it's by the same artist, but it's certainly a different style. So, again, to see that variety of artwork is probably why I got a shout out there for me.
Yeah, definitely. The thing that I like about, and we've talked about previously about having the need to have a wider pool of creators, is that you can, with a wider pool of creators, you can have different artists for different styles. Like you mentioned, Joan Boyce. He matched that Evil Lurk story to a T. And I'm sure when Glenn got the synopsis, he thought, "Yep, that's a John book. That's a John story."
Yeah.
Even the stories with Jeff Weigel, they matched, Hero Complex and Errands of Mercy and stuff like that. So that's the benefit of doing it. Now, for me, Jeff Weigel gets it for me as well. Probably. Now, don't get me wrong. I love his Sundays, but for me, the FREWs is where I'm giving him the vote, and that's because he does something that a lot of that I kind of haven't seen a lot of artists do, and that is when he drew the story for FREW. It's like and I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right or not, but he slightly modified his art style to suit a black and white print. Like he used the zipper tone, he used the different shading techniques and stuff like that, and it worked brilliant for a black and white and I think sometimes artists, and it might be a bit hard for a Team Fantomen artist and stuff like that, where they're producing for colour and then it gets changed to black and white for FREW. But sometimes when I open up a FREW comic, and it's kind of like, this could be better if they actually knew that they were producing a story art for a black and white story. So, so I loved that. And then the other one, I'm going to dig up an oldie, and that is Nut Westad, who did the Black Glove. For me, that's one of my all-time favourite stories, the Black Glove saga. And I was going through, and then I had about 5, and then I was going through the list, and then I saw him, and I thought, yep, that's it. He's on top of all of them. And, there's heaps of people I like to give a shout out, but unfortunately we can't name them all. We can't play favourites and stuff like that. So unfortunately we've got to go 2 each, and so they're my 2.
Okay. All right. No worries. Well, let's move then into the overall best story. So I guess when we're thinking this, we're thinking the way that the art works with the story, the overall impression that we've taken away from it. So you'd expect some crossover with some of the writers and the artists that we've already mentioned. Steve, actually, again, this is a option that you can vote for in the FREW survey on the website. And for Steve, on the website, you're allowed to pick 5. So I don't know where this 3 business on our run sheet comes from. But anyway, so Steve's 5 that he picked as his favourite stories for 2019 were Bell Tolls for Thee, Hero Complex by Duncan Munro, A Reckoning with the Nomad by Tony DePaul, obviously the daily story, Scorpius from Giant Size by Shane Foley, and Sword of the Caliph, which is the graphic novel.
Yeah. He raises some good ones there. The Reckoning was a cracking epic story, and then Scorpius was fun, and then the Sword of the Caliph, that, you know, it had issues, and we've pointed those out in our reviews and stuff like that. And I'll get to that later. And I think sometimes it might be missed a little bit, but that was a big step by FREW, and I reckon that should be up there as in the best, one of the best FREW overall issues for 2019, and it was voted as by
certainly you've got a chance to vote for that in a moment too. I guess for myself, in terms of the best story, I've waxed lyrical about Bell Tolls for Thee, so that's my favourite story, and I probably knew that as soon as I finished reading it back in January or February, whenever it was when the annual came out. I thought then, gee, this is going to take some beating, and it wasn't beaten as far as I was concerned. I've gone back and read it a dozen times since. I really love it as a story. Second, I had A Day at the Races by Matt Kime, because again, for I guess the reasons I mentioned before in terms of the writing, but then to back it up with the artwork that was so reminiscent in many, many ways of Ray Moore. I really enjoyed that. And Reckoning of the Nomad, I would agree with Steve there. I do want to give a shout out, though, in terms of best story, to Skyband, and I guess particularly because we saw it in colour, and I really enjoyed reading that one as well. So those are my top 3: Tolls for Thee, Day at the Races, and A Reckoning of the Nomad.
No worries. So mine, mine's pretty easy. It's Phantom Goes to War, which is the Lee Fawkes classic. The Bell Tolls for Thee, which we've talked about, and Requiem as well. Now, would you just about want to get buried with the annual then, the war themed annual? Is it? Let's put it this
way. Because all of those stories are from the same issue.
Yeah, and the annual was my vote as the best FREW issue, which we'll talk about later. But I really enjoyed that annual, and I was actually talking to one person who, and I won't mention their name, but he writes Phantom stories, and he's been involved in the publishing area and stuff like that. And he said that those 2 stories, The Bell Tolls for Thee and Requiem, he said at the time of printing, which is early 2019, he said by far are the best stories that FREW have ever produced. Now I know it's only a small sample, but that's how high he rated them, and they're definitely in the top 3, maybe 5 stories that FREW have ever produced. That's how far I rate them. And I know FREW haven't created too many stories. We may be looking at maybe 30. So it's a fairly small pool, but at this stage, those 2. And then, so that's where I rate them.
Fair enough. Well, all right. Well, I hope that your mate and yourself have obviously both jumped on and completed the survey, because Requiem in particular, which you love, needs some more love when it comes to the survey results. It hasn't featured in the top 5 at this stage. So in terms of the people who have responded so far at the time of recording, just over 100 respondents with 2 or 3 weeks to go. Day at the Races is currently people's favourite story, with 29% of people voting it as one of their top 3. Hero Complex is currently in 2nd position on 24%. Phantom Goes to War, which surprised me a little bit as such an old story, has made the top 3, but then you voted for it, Germ, so people are clearly still loving it. 22% that is currently on. Fourth is The Bell Tolls for Thee, with 19% of people voting for it, and A Reckoning with the Nomad, which we've mentioned, rounds out the top 5 at the moment with 16%. So again, I guess if you've got a favourite story, then you're listening and you're going, well, I can't believe that's not higher on the list. Make sure you get on and vote for it, because that's the only way it's going to climb into the top 5 there.
Definitely. And then one thing that surprises me a little bit is that there's no Team Fantomen story in there. Then there's a couple of interesting ones that I guess didn't make the cut. Like we're looking at so for instance, like there wasn't the Blood Rain. I would have thought
we haven't even mentioned that tonight.
Yeah, that was second. That was the second best story for Team Fantomen in 2018, and The Ghost of Gallows Inn, which was voted as the best story of Fantomen 2018. Both haven't even got a mention. So it's, and we have talked previously about Swedish fans and Australian fans having different tastes, and it's interesting to see that Australian stories are highly voted. Now, I would say that Australians are very patriotical, very patriarchal. So I reckon that, not having a go at anyone or anything, but I reckon that does play a little bit, that people would vote.
It makes sense. I wonder how the FREW stories will be received once they are being published more regularly in Sweden.
Yeah.
Just scanning through the results, Blood Rain is just sort of sliding into the top 10 at the moment.
Yeah.
And where's Requiem? Requiem is below that, so probably it's outside the top 10, I'd say.
Yeah, and what about Ghost at Gallows Inn?
Ghost at Gallows Inn. It's a little bit tricky to read. About what issue was that?
Ghost of Gallows Inn was issue 1847.
1847. Yeah, it's barely troubling the scorers at the moment. People have voted for it, and that's one thing that's important to say. Look, if I go through and look at the list of all of the stories produced by FREW so far this year, in 2019, about 100 people have given their top 3, and only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. 8 of the 73 stories have not received any votes. Yeah. So that's incredible that over 60 stories, someone out there has at least picked it in their top 3.
Is it top 3 or top 5?
Oh, top 5. Sorry, yes, for this. Yeah. But out of nearly 75 stories.
Yeah, and I guess
so you're making someone happy.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not going to be able to make everyone happy. And and another thing that I will say, especially we've made mention of this in the. Actually, no, I'm going to save that for another topic. So we'll move on.
Yes, okay, let's do that.
So what we'll do is we're going to talk next about the best non-FREW issue. Now, this is the best non-FREW issue. So this is like a comic that was not published by FREW. So, for instance, we can be talking about Hermes, Mythos, Comics Revue, Team Fantomen, Egmont.
Any of those other 7?
Other 7 publishers that have been publishing around the world. So, what about yourself, mate? I'll go first. I'm still talking, so I'll go first. So, for me, would be the Brazilian trade paperback, which it's a good issue. I like the care that they've done it. We've given our review of it. I'll hold it up as well.
Yeah.
Yep, that's that one. We've given our review in it in the last Comics and News podcast, so I won't go over all the good things about it. But I think what makes it a better issue than what it already is the fact that you can get a ring with it if you order it as well. And never underestimate the power of freebies. So that one definitely goes up there. And then I also did like the Fantomet trade paperback issue 1, which is the soft cover album. It was
the New Historia one. Is that the one you're talking?
That one, which and it's not just because I got my name published in there in one of the editorial pieces.
Didn't hurt though, I bet.
Oh, no, it didn't hurt. But it was a good. I enjoyed it. It was something a little bit special. It had a lot of hype with our Norwegian friends and stuff like that. So it was good. And same as this one with the Ring, it was good to see issues getting a lot of hype and a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
So what about yourself?
Well, I find this one difficult again because I don't actually get the copies of the books. And I'm comfortable enough picking covers from pictures I can see on the screen, but it's a bit hard to judge books and issues that you haven't actually got a copy of yourself. So probably the two that I own are probably the two that I'm going to vote for. One of them is the O Phantasma, as you've said, still in the shrink wrap. So clearly, the reason I like it so much is because of the Ring. So we did make it clear that the voting for that was on the grounds of all of the freebies and the extras that came with it, which I'm sure is why some people would have the annual included the reprint of 330 and all that sort of stuff. So so there's that. And second, I've gone with Lightning Strikes. Oh, but we've said Lightning Strikes #2 came out in 2018, didn't we?
Yeah.
So is this no good? I can't, even though I acquired it this year because it finally came to. Well, I quite like this anyway, not just because of the cover and because of the signature, but because of the short stories inside. So,
is there? No, it's just one story.
Yeah, the story. Sorry, I didn't mean that. The story. I quite enjoyed the story. This is how rarely I have non-FREW. I've got nothing to vote for because I don't own anything that's not FREW.
Well, you've only got yourself to blame for that one. So we'll move on then. We'll move on to something that you do have something to talk about. So first of all, this is the best FREW issue. Now, before I get you and Stephen reads it out, we're going to do the survey results, and then I'll open up to you, okay, Dan? So this is the best FREW issue. So this is a regular issue, the graphic novel, or whatever's come out from FREW. So far, and this is like the most clearest results that we've got so far. So again, this is the survey results so far with over 100 people who have voted. The annual has got almost 50% at 47% of people. So basically 1 out of 2 people have said that the annual is the best FREW issue of the year.
Is in their top 3.
Is in their top 3. So then you've got number 2, which is the Day at the Races, which is issue 1850, which is 25%. So that is 1 out of 4 people say it is one of their most favourite issues of the year. Then you've got the Prince Rex issue, which is a bit of a surprise, I must say, which is issue 1832, which is at 20%. Then at 4th, while Dan just gets his 4th beer,
it's holidays and it's Christmas. And it's Friday night.
is the sort of the Caliph graphic novel, which came out at Supernova this year, which is at 14%. So, and then at 5th, there's a lot of people that are very, very close within a whisper or like a 7-way tie. So we just won't worry about mentioning those. So the top 4, we've got the annual at 47%, Day at the Races at 25%, the Prince Rex at 20%, and the Sword of the Caliph at 14%. So how did you vote, and then how did Steve vote, mate?
In that order, I would have had probably. I did have Day at the Races in my top 3, and I probably have it. I think in 3rd as a total package. Is my 3rd favourite book of the year because it is more than just the story. It's the old school story. It's the old school art. It's the old school cover. It's the old school paper. It's a complete package of an issue. So I had that in 3rd. 2nd, I had the annual with Requiem and Tolls for Thee, 2 fantastic new stories packaged with some of the older stories, including Fan Mirrors to War, which is a classic as well, with missing issue 330. It's just impossible to go past that. And but I would say what I enjoyed as my best issue from FREW from the year, number one for me, would be Sword of the Caliph. I would actually have this as probably the favourite book that I picked up this year, again for the unusualness of the fact that it's a graphic novel. First time FREW have ever produced one of those. I really like the story as well. I like the way that it's been done. So that would be probably my favourite thing that FREW put out this year.
Yeah. And we've got a review of that on YouTube as well, which you can go, and if you haven't picked it up yet, you can go look at it. And you can also buy it on Comixology as well. Yeah,
there you go. Steve's top three, he had the annual, I don't know the order here, but he had the annual, he had the Hero Complex package, which is 1832, together with another Prince Rex story, an older Lee Falk story, and he had Sword of the Caliph in his three as well.
Yeah, me, I also have the Sword of the Caliph, like, for a lot of the same reasons as you. It's breaking new grounds for FREW, and it was a good read. It was an enjoyable read. Like, I read it 4 times before I did the review. So it's like, you know, I had read it, dissected it. You know, so it was, you know, normally, you know, call me slack or something, but I'll read something and then I'll do the review because I'll do it on first impression. But for the Sword of the Caliph, it was like, no, I want to read this again. No, I want to read it again. Oh, I better do this review. So I really enjoyed it. The annual, which we've talked about plenty of times. And the other one that I enjoyed, now, the stories, people probably, you know, might be a bit hit and miss, but I enjoy the Adventure Collections hardcover book, which was the cover by Chris Whale. Now, in my opinion, the cover sells it. If it was it's a fantastic cover. The way the FREW published it, with the felt, with the raised, with the funky feel of the print job and stuff like that, there's just great care in the way that was printed, and it wasn't that expensive either.
No.
So yeah, so that would probably be my best 3 FREW issues, and then of course there's a few honourable mentions, but which, you know, would be 1850 Hero Complex and Blood Rain and stuff like that as well. So, but before we move on to the best merchandise, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we've kind of raised it. You raised it, and then I've kind of teased it as well. Is what I think helps create the best FREW issue, but also the story, is when the issue is a bit special and there's a bit of fanfare about the issue. Like a classic example of that would be the Day at Races, like what you mentioned with the Tessa cover, the old style print and stuff like that. It creates buzz, and it's no surprise that that is fairly high in all of the results that we've seen so far. And so I do think that that does help.
Oh, of course.
It burns in people's memories.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, the annual is always going to be, you know, you would think, well, FREW probably would imagine that it should be in the top 3 or the favourite every year because of the extra work that goes into it, and particularly since, you know, lately they've been commissioning new stories to go in it as well, and the extras that go with it.
Themes and
so all of that goes together. But you're right, whatever makes it stand out in people's memories, because what we're seeing in the top 5 is not, and in the ones that we've nominated, they're not regular issues for the most. You know, they're not just normal ones. Hero Complex, you know, with the name like that on the back of the Sammy J tour, and the fact that it was Jeff Weigel's first art in comic book, and the fact that it was Duncan Munro who wrote it, who's a friend of so many of Fan and Fans as well. So, you know, there was a lot going on with that story as well.
Yeah, and because I'm just going on the back of that, when we were talking about in our last podcast with Blood Rain, how like we kind of felt that it was almost like it was a it was a nice gimmicky type of story that wasn't given a gimmick. So I'll just wonder, and I'm just going to say it, and then we'll leave it there and we'll move on. But I wonder if that was given a more gimmicky treatment, whether that would have shot up in the best story.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see, for instance, it have a jam cover to itself. Jam story, jam cover. But then Team Fantomen didn't give it a jam cover either. So who knows? But
yeah. But we'll leave it there. We won't answer and solve every issue on the podcast. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on from comics and we're going to go on to merchandise. So what we're going to do is we're going to list the best merchandise that we believe from 2019. And what we're going to do is we're going to list it all to the best of our memory. So we've got them into 3 categories, and this was a bit of an interesting topic with the team. We've got license, so that's stuff via like Comics Kingdom, FREW, and then Pod 66, which is that clothing brand as well. Then we've got the unlicensed. So say, for instance, you've got the ChronicleChamber stickers and shirts, the fan clubs.
Well, you're skimming through the list. Let's just do the list.
Yeah, I'll just give you examples. And then we've also got the convention stuff. So this is the stuff that was available via comic conventions from around the world. And there's a few of those, and so which we'll go through those. So what we'll do is, first of all, we'll go through. Dan, do you want to do the license, and then I'll do the unlicensed and the conventions, and then you can tell me your top.
Righto. Okay, so in terms of licensed merch that came out in 2019 that we are aware of, FREW obviously are again the predominant providers of that, and the big ticket item there had to be the trading cards, the Fandom Gallery Series 2 trading cards that came out in time for Supernova. That was obviously their big one. They did release a bunch more bookmarks at Supernova. There was the A2 posters I've mentioned already, the Glenn Lumsden and the Grange Wallace ones that were turned into covers that were turned into posters. There was another 3 posters in that series, and there's a collection there. The 70th trade paperback from 2018 was released in hardcover with a second, far more limited run, including ones that were signed by all of the contributors who are still alive. There was an A3 size folio at Supernova as well with the Pirates theme. Glenn Lumsden's giant size covers had a mini folio in an A4 size, also available at Supernova. The Chris Weil Doll poster that I've mentioned as well. So all of those were timed for Supernova and came out in June of this year. Comics Kingdom, which I think for me is a very exciting one because that is Comics Kingdom are the subsidiary of King Features, and they are, I guess, the closest to the source. They released a line of shirts and other apparel that you can go and get from their website, mugs and all that sort of stuff as well. So that's probably not to bury the lead, but that probably is globally the biggest deal in terms of what's been produced.
And we've done a review. Sorry, just to jump in, we've just done a review of those, some of the shirts and the apparel as well, which is on YouTube.
Yeah, and what I would say from that is you seem to have got one of the first shirts, and every other shirt or photo that I've seen since is a much better quality one than you've got in the YouTube clip. So
maybe they watched the video and realised maybe they to do a better job. The game. But no, I've noticed that as well. It's one other person said that as well. They said, "Is that actually a real photo?" Because the one that was in the ChronicleChamber video did not look that good.
No, it did not. I've seen at least 4 or 5 other photos, all of which look much better than yours.
So shout out to Comics Kingdom. If one of us orders stuff, make sure you give us the good stuff. Otherwise, you're going to get a bad review.
Comics Kingdom also put out a little skull pin to the Phantom skull pin in relation to San Diego Comic-Con, and so that was the other thing that they did. Pod 66, Jermaine mentioned, is a little English company. We haven't actually seen any of their items in the flesh, but their website is pretty impressive in terms of the range of fully licensed clothing that they have got available.
Awesome. So now we'll go into the unlicensed stuff. So this is the stuff that it's generally fans are making it, and then they may kind of sell it, but it's kind of readily available. So, for instance, you got Guy Poisson's postcards, and then there's some Christmas cards and stuff that he has released as well. You can look on his Facebook page, and some of that stuff is still available. Very beautiful colouring and print job as well. Now, we even ourselves dabbled a little bit. We got some stickers made up, some shirts. You can see us wearing one of the shirts now, Happy Fantoming, and we got some stickers as well, which I'm just quickly just showing one of the brands. There was about, 4 or 5 designs?
Five designs.
5 designs. And we'll probably do some more stickers for, we'll do some more stickers for 2020 as well, I reckon. Okay, and then you've also got Pete Clowes, who has his birthday today. So happy birthday, buddy. We've already said happy birthday to you on Facebook and social media. But he is a friend of the Phantom, pun intended. Himself and a couple of other artists and creators like Salvaludo has created some fun little things, like there's a belt buckle, a couple of pins, coins and lanyards and stuff like that. Now, another fan whose name is Scott Loxley, who was actually, what was his relationship? I
think he used to work in a printing press.
Yeah.
And must have been in the situation, because he seems to have the screen prints for the shirt designs from both the official Phantom Club and John Henderson's independent Phantom Club. So I'm not exactly sure how he managed to be sitting on both, have a foot in both camps there. But halfway through the year, he sort of announced on Facebook. I think he actually inquired, would there be, or was just showing off, oh, here I've got one of the old screens, and someone's gone, gee, does it still work? Could you make me a shirt? And then the next thing he knew, he was making 50 shirts and sending them out to people who had to hit him up on Facebook. So, but he has said that he's retired the screens again.
Yeah, so in other words, there's probably been a vulture or two that have probably tried to purchase it for their vacuum of a collection, and that is a subtle dig, and they know who they are. Okay, then there's some releases that have been released, special releases via conventions. What tends to happen is at conventions, the licensing rules kind of lax a little bit, and so people tend to produce a little bit of stuff, which I think is brilliant, and then there should be more of it. So, of course, there's the Luca prints, which is the folio of 8, which ChronicleChamber brought in. How many did we brought in? 20 copies for fans from around Australia, and
so they're actually Salvaludo and Eugenio Mazzio produced those for the Luca Comic and Games convention over in Italy.
Yep.
Hence, we call them the Luca prints.
And you can find out a fair bit of that on our website. Jeff Weigel produced some Supernova prints. There was a set of, I thought there was more than 2, because I thought he'd...
well, I only got 2, so I thought I got the full set.
So Jeff Weigel, whether it was 2 or more, he produced a couple of Supernova prints as well. Jamie Johnson did a Supernova print, which was the Lightning Strikes cover, which Dan snuck that into a 2019 best of.
I think that was only for Brisbane. I may have only been to the Brisbane Supernova, that print.
Yes. So Paul Mason has done a couple of Supernova and Comic Con prints, which are a couple of Fantomen Vietnam ones and Kid Phantom ones. Now these are along with a second work in progress sketchbook. Now these were for these Brisbane Supernova, and then there's no word whether he's going to be releasing these come Sydney or any other conventions. But
I don't think so. He had them out for the Oz Comic Con just before Brisbane Supernova, and was talking about whatever was left was going to go on his website, but he had no intention of making more.
Yep. So there's been a couple of those. So I guess the whole point of these convention releases is that a lot of them are limited edition, and you almost have to be there to be able to get it as well. So there's a bit of stuff. If you've got friends and all that, they can usually help you. Now, the exciting one, which we weren't really sure where we were going to stick it, and we just stuck it here, was the Supernova skull pin. Now, again,
are you holding that up?
No, so just talking.
Okay, so that's the Supernova skull pin there. Bigger than I expected when I saw the pictures of it ahead of time.
Yeah. Now we're not 100% sure if these are licensed or not, but
they're not licensed.
But I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. But no, they were very popular, and a lot of this stuff has been popular because a lot of fan collectors are, like I joked about the vacuum of people's collections, but that's what it is like. They just have to get everything. There's a lot of completists out there. They want everything. They want as much as possible, and it's good to see that we've got a fair bit that people can buy this year. So, Dan,
what I would say about I was just going to say about these pins. They were sold out by halfway through the second day of Brisbane Supernova, and I know they ran out in Adelaide as well. People who have got them at the moment, yes, they're rare right now. I would not be surprised at all if Supernova notices that they got sold out of these and brings them to Melbourne and Sydney next year. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Oh, to be honest, they'll probably, especially with Sydney, who does have regular Phantom creators, and it's the big one and stuff like that. And then FREW have said that they're likely to go to Melbourne again at the beginning of the year. So I reckon Supernova originally released 4 designs. There was a Phantom and a couple of others. I wouldn't be surprised if they do their own separate line of the Phantom. They know they're on a winner, and I would not be surprised if they produce some more. And so they should.
That'd be cool.
Oh, they should. So, Dan, do you want to give us your top 3 merchandise items that you have either purchased or that you have admired from afar?
Sure. Well, the first 2, like I said, the trading cards is the big ticket item, and I think the bat has to be number 1 for me. They're just so much fun to collect, and I've collected a couple of sets with 3, I guess. One for myself, and collected another one with my son, and collected another one to send to someone overseas. So it really is quite fun to go through and collect those and get them all organised and get in the folder and that sort of thing. So the trading cards, and again, the wait to finish the story, the whole story behind the trading cards, everything about it I love. Even the little imperfections, it's just it's truly Phantom is what it is. So really liked that. Second on my list is probably the Chris Wale poster. I've got it hanging up in the skull cave here, and it's just a stunning image, and in that size, it is just remarkable. So I love that, and I haven't purchased any of the Comics Kingdom merch, but for the reasons I said before about it being so important that King Features are starting to generate this stuff themselves, and provide us with more licensed options. I really love drooling on the laptop while I'm scrolling through that website, but I haven't purchased anything yet.
No worries. Well, the trading cards is an obvious one, as you said. It's fun, trading, getting it, looking at the different art. I get cinctures on some of them, and, looking at, little clues and stuff like that. It's good fun. For me, the other 2 would be the Supernova pin. For me, Supernova, what in my opinion makes this so special is that the Supernova skull pin, which you showed up previously, is that Supernova's finally figured that, it's easy to draw in people for all the other Batman and Spider-Man and stuff like that. But there's enough Phantom fans out there that they can be producing stuff as well. Now, you kind of made a bit of a dig that they'll probably produce more of those pins, and I reckon they've done it with the t-shirts that they've keep finding more of as well. So for those who come in late, back when Alex Soviet came to Australia, which would have been probably 5 years ago, if not more. Actually, it would have been maybe 6 years ago, actually, because Ari went to that one, and that was before Abby. Alex did a design for a shirt which was given to all of the volunteers. Now, at the time, I actually inquired, and it was, oh no, we've only done enough shirts for our volunteers, bar a couple of extra. And then in the last 3 or 4 years, there seems to be a steady stream of those T-shirts. So
Yeah.
I think Supernova might have finally woken up that they might need to produce more Phantom merch, whether it's licensed or not. Me, I don't really care. Now, the third favourite thing that I did like would have to be our own stuff that we've done. I can't believe you've missed this. Might have to talk about your loyalty a little bit more, but but no, all jokes aside, but the stuff that we did, the t-shirts, I'm a real fan of. They've come up a real treat. But I will admit, the stickers are what I like the most. I like stickers. Even before I collected the Phantom, I like stickers, and I used to always buy them and stick them everywhere and drive my mum crazy. And my daughter does it now, so I think it's revenge. But I like the stickers. I like the fact that they were fairly, we've given a lot away and as prizes and stuff like that. And for me, I didn't get to go through the Phantom Club days. I'm not that old. So for me, it's almost like I get to live just a tiny little bit of that with these stickers and stuff like that, because they're done very similar as what those stickers were. So,
and that was, yeah. No, I would agree with that. In the sense, that was a big part of the look that I was certainly hoping we were going to achieve when we decided to set out on the stickers march. And no, I completely agree with you. It is fun to have actually produced that. I guess, I wish we could afford to license it. I really do. But we're going to need a lot more Patreon supporters before we can get to the level of producing licensed merch, thanks to the contract requirements from King Features. So, no, I do like those as well. Have you actually stuck any of your stickers anywhere?
Yeah, I've stuck them somewhere with my other stickers.
Okay. But you have actually peeled and stuck a few.
No.
Well, I've at least done one, and on YouTube you can see it right now. I've stuck my sticker on the back of my phone, so I've got a ChronicleChamber. I actually get a little pang every time I take a photo of somebody because they're looking at our website. So, and I've had people who I'm taking photos of comment, ChronicleChamber.com. So.
That's good.
I'd like to see more stickers get stuck places.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Phantom collectors are a bit of a hoarders.
I know. It's the only one I've done, and that's the one I used as a name badge when I met Billy Zane. So I wasn't going to waste it by throwing it in the bin. I stuck it on the back of my phone after that.
So if or when we do more stickers, we're going to have to buy 3 sets, 2 to keep, and then another one to actually stick places.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about hoarding and stuff like that, let's move on to a bit of fun from a ChronicleChamber and from a personal point of view. So give us your best addition to your collection. Now, this is one edition. You've got
I know.
You've got about 10 things here.
I say at the top of that, I'm going to pick this is my short list, and I'm going to pick from it. And now's the time.
I'll bet you're going to choose at least 5 of those.
No, 2.
At least 5.
I'm going to pick 2. Most of them I have already mentioned. Many of them I have already mentioned in other ways. I've got 2 favourite things that I've added to the collection this year. And the first one was actually way back in January. It's a sketch cover from Cy Barry. I'm really pleased that I decided to send that over. I'm doing a bit of a my motif, I guess, or my theme as I do my sketch covers is jungle drums. I've loved this profile or bust of the Phantom forever, and so to actually get an original version of that from Cy with the jungle drums across the top makes that an absolute highlight. And I guess in a similar vein, something touched by Phantom royalty is my second one. And that's this Billy Zane Milk poster that I was able to get him to sign for me at Brisbane Supernova. So those are the 2 best additions to my collection this year.
No worries. Well, for me, I haven't brought as many things, but I brought bigger things, if that kind of makes sense. Right?
Ari must be delighted.
More so instead of buying a lot of small things, I've brought larger, more expensive things. So for instance, I got some Cy Barry original art. I got a Sunday and a daily to add to my collection and stuff like that as well. So that's probably my best addition. And then there's been some other original art pieces as well as some other stuff as well, which comes probably a second. But unfortunately, there's only one Cy Barry, and I'm sure even the others of whose art I've now added to my collection would agree that, everyone else is pretty much second to Cy Barry.
I've actually, there's been times in the past I've purchased artwork and then hung it on the wall and sent a photo back to the artist saying, okay, this is it hanging, and they can see next to that is a Cy Barry Sunday or the Cy Barry wedding print. And then the comment I always get back is, oh, I'm honoured even to be on the same wall with Cy Barry. So
yeah,
I think that's fairly universal.
Yes, exactly. So let's talk about beating our own drum. Talking about drums is, I think we've all got the same one here. So that's going to be rather obvious that the best Chronicle Chamber moment will have to be the podcast with Billy Zane. But
yeah,
so that's a fairly obvious one. Now, do you have another one that may be a little bit different? Because it's just going to be boring if we say the same thing.
Oh, best Chronicle Chamber moment. See, meeting and talking and sitting down and interviewing Billy Zane is so far ahead of anything else. 2019 will always be the year that I sat down with Billy Zane.
Yeah, but that's obvious. Everyone knows that. Give us another one. All right, I'll go first.
Okay, no, you put me on the spot, but in terms of Chronicle Chamber moment, things that happened because of Chronicle Chamber, no, you better go next because I'm going to have to think about that.
For me, it will be the Chronicle Chamber merchandise that we produced. I've always had the dream, and I know these are unlicensed and stuff like that, so legally, technically, they don't exist, and we were just giving them away. But for me, there's always been the dream of producing, our own Phantom merchandise, and that just gave me a little bit of a taste of that, and I guess made me realise just how stressful it is, and maybe I should just be thankful of just critiquing what everyone else brings out. But that will probably be one of the
okay
after Billy.
All right. Now that I've had a quick scroll back through the year that was, and now I've got two. One of them is going to be the Kickstarter campaign for the Phantom board game back in February. The ability for us, we were a very small player in that, but we, helped promote the Kickstarter. You and I were both refreshing the page multiple times each day. We're in a message group with some of the creators and being able to get semi-regular updates from them and talk about it and that sort of thing. So that was just a lot of fun to be involved in. And then the moment that ticked over,
living through the highs and the lows and stuff like that. It was great. It was good.
And that was an opportunity we wouldn't have had if we hadn't had the podcast and the website. So I did very much appreciate that. And the other one that I'd like to give thanks and give a shout out for, I think it was the opportunity to meet Grange Wallace, actually. He's a Phantom creator who sort of, 2018 he had his first covers, but then we interviewed him this year and a couple of times now and got to meet him personally at Sydney and we've sort of kept in touch since. And, he's a really great guy and we had a lot in common and, getting to meet and know Grange, I'd have up in there in my top three as it turns out now. Sorry, Grange, I didn't think about you when I was enamoured by Billy Zane, but I think you can probably accept that.
Yeah. And now wasn't that a lot more fun talking about these other moments than not just Billy? Because Billy's an obvious answer.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. So what we're going to do is, and I think this bit might take a little bit longer, but we'll try and keep it as short as possible. This is our last discussion point, people. So we're almost finished. So before you jump back into the house at the end of the day, just stick around for another 10, 20 minutes and pretend you're on an important phone call. and then we'll finish this podcast off for you. So our overall reflection of 2019. Now, this can be FREW, it can be worldwide publishers, it could be in general, it could be talking about Billy Mania. It could be whatever you would like. So, Dan, did you want to go first?
Yeah, well, as I've just said, it's hard to go past Billy Zane.
Billy Mania has hit Australia.
Yeah, exactly, and he seems to have discovered the convention circuit. There's a few more YouTube videos of him talking at other conventions in America, and it certainly hit Australia when he was in Adelaide and Brisbane. And when you've got people flying from Melbourne to Adelaide to see him, you've got people coming from Victoria up to Brisbane to see him. It was. Brisbane Supernova was like a mini Sydney Supernova, except on steroids. If you know what I mean, it was smaller in a sense, but on the other hand, it was so much bigger because of Billy Zane. So I hope what that does though is translate into a movie. We've talked about that. The petition is still running. We've ticked over 1,000 supporters in the petition now, which is just fantastic. I was really hopeful that we were going to get to that four digits before Christmas.
You were hopeful
very
that
excited
we'll just
about that.
get 300.
Oh, when you start it, you just don't know where it's going to go. And the funny thing is, it absolutely crawled from 970 to 990. It might have taken about 3 days. That was yesterday. It was on 990, 990, and now it's on 1,030 or something like that a day later. So it's fits and spurts. So hopefully, there's some progress there. And I mentioned that in the Christmas podcast. I'm not going to go over that again. I just, looking back at the year, it just seemed to be a normal old year. We're just chugging along right through the first 6 months. And then we sort of hit June, July. All of the stuff came out at Supernova from FREW. Jeff Weigel arrived, and it just has been, news and everything big seems to have happened in the last 6 months for mine. I've already mentioned the demise of Kid Phantom, earlier when you cut me off and rightly suggested we were going to talk about that at the end. So I'm not going to go over it again, but I am still disappointed with that one. But I guess the big takeaway, and we've already alluded to this as well, is how many new countries have got on board with publishing the Phantom. And hopefully I know Norway, for instance, has gone backwards to it a point, but the fact that all of these other countries are coming on board surely is a positive. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Gives me optimism.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think all of those type of things I tend to agree with. I actually think, and this, I'm not sure how this is going to sound, especially, for fans, but I actually think FREW making the hardcore on something like Kid Phantom and Phantom's World, let's not forget Phantom's World didn't survive either. I think it was a good thing that they made the hardcore, in the sense that I would rather, they have to run a business. They have to make money, they have to make a business, and in a business you have to make the hardcore. And it would have been a very hardcore because they were friends with the creators, they had invested a lot. This was their brainchild in a sense. They talked about Kid Phantom 3 years, before we actually saw Kid Phantom. But to be able to make a hardcore like that gives me optimism that they're not just producing content for the sake of producing content. They want to make stuff that is going to sell, and that, and we've seen it before with the Kiwi covers and stuff like that. So it gives me optimism that FREW is able to make a hardcore like that, even when it's not popular. But yeah, and then the other thing that and we haven't really talked about it as much, and I don't even think it's gotten as much discussion as what it probably should have, but that's the fact that Luaga's president again.
Luaga's always been president
in both universes. We won't go into the argument about using the lack of a better term of universes and stuff, but the fact that Team Fantomen, and we heard Mikkel talk about it on our podcast, with that he said he would like to have Luaga president again, and then the only way it might happen is if he writes the story himself. So a year and a half later, he writes the story and Luaga is president again. That's a big deal, and I think it's a positive change, just because it makes things less complicated. So that's another overall reflection of 2019 that I like. Now, a negative. I have to make a mention of a negative, and that is I wish FREW would not release all their stuff at once at Supernova. It's too expensive, and it is very, very hard to be able to hide that much money and hide those purchases from the wife.
I'm not going to argue with you there. What I would say about the Luaga being president again, maybe that hasn't got the traction because it hasn't. We haven't seen it in a FREW comic yet, so it'll be interesting to see if more people pick up on it once it's published.
Yeah,
people that we talk to on a regular basis, because we're Australians and we read FREWs. I think maybe it'll get more traction then. It would be. It's been a 20, 30 year glitch, I guess, between the two versions of the story. And if we can put all of that political garbage in Bangala and just accept that Luaga was president through the whole time, and particularly if we can forget about Sandor Singh, then that will be a fantastic move.
Yeah, that might have to be your Christmas wish for 2020, because I don't think that's going to happen. All right, mate. So we said that we were going to try and aim for this for under 2 hours, and I think we have done very, very well. So
only if we wrap it up real quick.
All right. Well, that means you're not allowed to talk anymore then. So let's.
Wait until you hear what I've got to say.
Okay, so we're going to just wrap up. So thank you everyone for listening to us. We hope that you've enjoyed our Phantom Faves of 2019, or the best of 2019. Now, again, as we said, this is just our opinion. You don't have to agree with us, and you're more than welcome to share your comments on social media, or you can contact us via chroniclechamber@gmail.com. So, and then before we go, don't forget that the other way that you can have your say is actually to fill out the survey. Now, for those who don't know, that the survey results actually do go to FREW. So if you think something is good and it needs more attention, you vote. This is one way you can put your opinion across of what you buy, because these results go to FREW. So that link again is on our website, or it's bity.y/FREW 2019. All right. So before we wrap up, we just wanted to quickly talk about our Patreon. A huge shout out for 2019 to all our Patreons who have supported us in 2019 and previously. We hope that we are thankful for you. We hope that you stick around for 2020 and beyond. We want to keep doing cool stuff. One of the things that we do with our cool stuff is the Phantom Preservation Project. It is a reward level, so if you support us with $5 or more, basically you have access to it. Now, we've just recently done some latest additions on the website. So, Dan, I know you've been busy with that. Do you just want to quickly give us a bit of an idea? Because there is going to be an article on the web that is going to highlight everything that has been added.
Yeah, for sure. This is the bit where I sort of alluded there's a lot to say, because, and again, it's on me that I haven't updated the P3 for a little while. And so I felt guilty about that. And so I've put a whole bunch of extra stuff in there. Part of the P3 is archiving the X-Men Phantom podcast in case the iTunes ever goes bust or whatever, who knows, but it's there. One extra special thing this time is if you are a Patreon member, you can actually skip ahead a week or two and listen to episode 139, which is scheduled but not published, but it is in the archive in the P3. So you can go and listen to a podcast ahead of time if you'd like to. There's also a whole bunch of extra newspaper files from Australia, from particularly around Billy Zane and the movie 1994 to 1996. Most of those articles are focused there, because you might notice there's a bit of a Billy theme to this.
Billy Mania, mate.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I'm very excited about is we've been able to, thanks to the help of one of our patrons, Thomas Askeland in Norway, has come across a copy of Fantomet from 1944. So it's a wartime edition. I can't read it, but some of the imagery and that sort of thing in it is pretty cool. Excuse me. There's also with 2 more editions of the Friends of the Fandom newsletter. So issues number 6 and number 9 have found their way into the collection. So that means we now have almost a complete run from 3 through to 24, just missing issues 1 and 2 at this stage. I mentioned Billy, and this is the last thing that I'll say. There's a whole bunch more stuff that's in the P3 that I haven't talked about just now, but the other big ticket item, I guess, is a 30-minute behind-the-scenes documentary from HBO called First Look at the Phantom, which is a behind-the-scenes look at the movie, including interviews with Billy and Christy Swanson and Catherine Zeta-Jones and Treat Williams, as well as Christopher Simon Windsor and all of these other people as well, which is really, really cool. And for what it's worth, it keeps disappearing from channels on YouTube. So I think it's actually not allowed to be on YouTube for copyright reasons, but for evermore, it is now tucked safely in the Phantom Preservation Project.
Unless you're HPO and you're listening to this, and
in which case we've got no idea what you're talking about.
And then we're also doing a bit of a Christmas giveaway for those who would like who have always wondered what the Phantom Preservation Project is about. And that there will be a link where you can access some of that on the website as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Awesome. So our website, which we've talked about a lot, is ChronicleChamber.com. So that's just ChronicleChamber.com. You'll be able to find all our podcasts, all our news articles, links to our social medias, and everything else in between. If you want to email us and talk to us, chroniclechamber@gmail.com. We've had people just want to show us their collection. If you want to just drop an email or a Christmas message or a New Year message or whatever, just send us an email. We'd love to hear from people. The other ways you can get in contact with us and talk to us is via YouTube, Chronicle Chamber. There's been a bit of work on that recently, which is looking a lot better. Facebook, which tends to be where most people go, and that's chroniclechamber.com if you search for that. And then we're also administrators of the group Phantom Collector as well, which is a bit of fun. If Twitter is your poison, you can find us at the handle @chronicle_tweet. And on Twitter, we got a bit of a shout out from Diana Palmer, aka Christy Swanson, as well. So happy birthday to you as well. On Instagram, you can find us, or the gram, as some people like to call it. We're hip, which is at Chronicle Chamber. As always, you can find us on iTunes or Spotify or your favorite Android app. You just need to search for either Chronicle Chamber, The Phantom, or, similar type of words, expand, and you should be able to find us. And one way to be able to help us get found is if everyone leaves a review and a 5-star rating, which kind of helps as well. As the way the algorithms work. So that is everything, mate. Thank you for sticking with me. I know you're fading pretty quickly. Those beers have worn off.
Well, more to the fact it's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning now.
So, thank you for being with us and helping us and stuff like that in 2019, mate. 2020 is a nice little round number, so a lot of people are excited about 2020. So let's see what 2020 brings. And thank you, everyone, and happy Fantomen.
Good on you, Jim, and same compliments to you for your year. You've put in a lot of work, whether it's the relationships that you form with people and creators who then come on the podcast and talk to us, the research you put in behind the scenes, and all the work on social media especially. So thanks very much for your year, mate, and looking forward to bigger and better things again next year. So happy New Year and happy Fantoming to everybody.
500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck, and upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy." injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom,
The ghost who walks.
the Phantom,
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't mind the Phantom. He fights